to solve problems in their communities and industries. Uh, there are a lot of reasons why people choose open source or proprietary software, but the most common ones are peer review, because the source code is freely accessible and the open source community is very active. Open source code is actively checked and improved upon by peer programmers. Think of it as living code rather than the code that is closed and becomes stagnant. Transparency. Need to know exactly what kind of data are moving where or what kinds of changes have happened in the code. Open source allows you to check and track that for yourself without having to rely on vendor promises. Reliability. Proprietary code relies on the single author or company controlling that code to keep it updated, patched, and working. Open source code outlives its original authors because it is constantly updated through active open source communities. Open source standards and peer reviews ensure that open source code is tested appropriately and often. Flexibility. Because of its emphasis on modification, you can use open source code to address problems that are unique to your business or community. You aren't logged into using the code in any specific way, and you can rely on community help and peer review when you implement new solutions. Lower cost. It's free of cost. There is no charge for open source code. So yeah, it, no vendor lock-in. Freedom for the user means that you can take your open source code anywhere and use it for anything at any time. Open collaboration. The existence of active open source communities means that you can find help, resources, and perspectives that reach beyond one interest group or one company. So that was a brief introduction about open source. Now coming to Creative Commons, you all must have heard about Creative Commons, as Creative Commons participates in a lot of open source programs. But let's take a little bit deeper. Creative Commons is an American nonprofit organization and international network devoted to educational access and expanding the range of creative works available for others to build upon legally and to share. The organization has released several copyright licenses known as Creative Commons licenses free of charge to public. These licenses allow authors of creative works to communicate which rights they reserve and which rights they waive for benefit of recipients or other creators. Creative Commons licenses do not replace copyright, but they are based upon it. They replace individual negotiation for specific rights between owner, copyright management with a some rights reserved management applying standardized licenses for reuse cases when no commercial compensation is sought by the copyright owner. The result is an agile, low overhead and low cost copyright management regime benefiting both copyright owners and licensees. Creative Commons has been recognized by by providing an alternative to the automatic all rights reserved copyright and has been dubbed some rights reserved. Creative Commons has been credited with generating interest in the issue of intellectual property and contributing to rethinking of the role of the commons in the information age. Beyond that, Creative Commons has provided institutional, practical, and legal support for individuals and groups wishing to experiment and communicate with culture more freely. As a developer, uh, Creative Commons has been a magnificent place to contribute. I there are the people there are lot generous and helpful. You can seek help anytime, anywhere you want, and the community never fails to inspire me. So at this note, I'll end my part and request Dhruv to take over. He is a community coordinator there, and he is an amazing developer and a very cool mentor to me. So you can take it over.
So hi everyone. It's incredible to see so many people like psyched up for open source. So I'm just gonna share my screen and take you through.
Hi, Dhruv.
Hi,
If
yes.
you don't mind, we just want to keep a small poll, for the people to give a break to them to process the previous things, right? If you can see the previous screen, if the previous charts, I'm sharing the link again. Just log on and tell us about your favorite open source organization. Now, you know about Creative Commons, but you must have contributed to any other open source organization. Feel free to drop your favorite open source organization there.
So just so I've also contributed to Senpai in the past. You must have heard about Senpai. It's it's a Python organization that builds symbolic computation libraries. So they're actually a very incredible organization. And before Creative Commons, I used to actively contribute there, and they're just amazing in every sense of the word.
We are receiving some cool replies from Mozilla, Quivix, Fosatia, of course, Creative Commons,
Yeah.
Senpai, right?
What
Anyone else who have not contributed but like that organization or would like to contribute to their organization in future? Fedora, of course. Python, great. WordPress, great. Apache, okay, cool,
these are all great organizations, to be honest.
great,
Thanks. Great job.
cool. So, and anyone having any query from Dhruvi ma'am's part, you can drop them here. We can take them in the end in the Q&A session. Okay, cool. Dhruv, you can take over.
So hi again. I've been working with Creative Commons for about a year and a half, and in that time, I've seen that working in open source gives you a lot of exposure, and it's an extremely rewarding experience. So today, I'm just going to show you how you can start by taking over a very small issue, and just show you how you can like get in the flow for contributing to open source, right? So I'm just going to share my screen and.
Looks like the roof got disconnected. Okay. Till then, I think if you can send another poll, we can have some opinions around what people think here.
Hey, sorry.
Hey, Dhruv, yeah.
I actually dropped off because I hadn't given Chrome permission to access the screen.
Fair,
So
no worries.
now you should be able to see this. So is my screen visible now?
Yeah.
So to start with, we always start at the homepage of the organization. The best sources for information are always present there. In our case, I just want to show you a small issue and how to solve that. And for that, I'll take the simplest language imaginable. We'll go with HTML. And so see, this is creativecommons.github.io's source code. It's all visible for everyone to see and modify. And To start with, let's check out the contributing.md file, which contains information that a new contributor would need to get started. So most repos will have all the information you need in contributing.md, but we decided to host it all on a different website. The link to that is present here. So let's just check this website out, right, to see what the rules are for contributing. So each organization has some guidelines about how new contributors can find their way around. So uh, this page is a list of those rules. We have some labels that we apply to our issues to help you identify which ones are the best ones to contribute to. There is the help wanted label, there's a good first issue label. These issues are generally the issues that we have selected for the community members to work with. These require no special privileges. Anyone can just find an issue that has these labels and start contributing to it. But we'll just not go through all of these rules right now. I'll just give you an overview and you can read them on your own time. But to start contributing, we first need to find a repo, right? What are we going to contribute to? So we have an issue finder. Oh, just one quick fact. This entire website was built by Dhruvi as a part of our internship. So this is actually just amazing work. I just want to shout it out. So we'll start with the issue finder to help us find a quick issue that we can resolve. And this helps you find issues that are relevant to your skill set. So if you have skills in Python or JavaScript, you can just use that to filter the issues out. And if this is your first time contributing, you can just say yes, and we'll reduce the list to a list of issues that are good for first timers. So I think this one is a good issue that we can solve for this demonstration. Let's just open this up. The things we need to check to know if an issue is actively being developed or not, if it's ready for work or not, are these labels. So here we see that this issue has a ready for work label, the thing I'm hovering over here. It's also a good first issue, and it's been marked ready for work. So I think we can just start. As soon as you find a good issue, just make sure you post a message that you intend to work on it. So I think I'll just say, I'm interested in work on this issue. Once you set this, I'm actually using my sister's account to do this demo. So her name is Anandi, and I just hijacked her account for this. So once you do this, some organizations will actually assign you to these issues. So if I just log in from my regular account, and so you'll see that once you request to work on the issue, the maintainer will assign you to it, and then you can probably just start working. So what you need to do is you need to fork this repo, because you probably won't have access to write to it. So forking is very simple. You just click this button and fork. So I'm not going to go into the details of Git or anything in this session, but a fork is basically a copy of the entire repo to which you have the permission to write. So it's a complete copy that you can make modifications in. So once you've forked it, you need to clone the repo, and cloning basically takes a repo and makes a clone of that repo on your local system. So you just do gh repo clone. To speed this up, I'll actually stop this and just go into the repo that I've already cloned beforehand. So this is actually a copy of the repo that you saw in GitHub locally. So once it's been cloned, you can actually just make changes to it. right? But let's go through the issue once again and see what that was about, right? So the issue says that the section about proposing a new issue still refers to the not ready for work label. By that, they mean this, this part. So this label we actually deprecated a couple of weeks ago, and we brought in a new labeling system, right? So we need to replace this with the status awaiting triage label. Uh, Maybe you might not know what this is, so you can definitely ask the mentors in the chat about any issues that you might have queries with, and they'll probably get back to you very soon and clarify your doubts. But in this case, let's just not do that, and we'll start fixing this, right? So most repos readmes also contain helpful tips on how to build and run the project. So in this case, these are the steps. So you need to have pipenv installed, you need to have node installed, and you can just go through this list. I don't need to do that because I already contributed to it. But this is the main step that helps you run the server, right? So I'm just gonna.
So Dhruv, I have a question
Yeah,
here.
sure.
When you say issues have these labels, right? For example, I find an issue that doesn't have this label. So let's say a newbie would have raised that issue or something, where he, let's say, forgot to put in the labels or wasn't aware. How do we go about that then?
So maintainers have this job of actually seeing new issues that community members have opened and assigning the right labels to it. So when a new issue is opened, it has certain labels like this. I'll just show you. So if someone raises a bug report, it's not showing up. So I'll just take it. So when someone raises a bug report, it already has a few labels like goal improvement, status awaiting triage, and aspect code, priority low. These labels are already assigned to issues as and when they are open. Then the community members will go through the issues that have awaiting triage label and assign the right labels to it. So whether it is ready for work, whether it is blocked by something else, whether some more needs to be done to reproduce this issue. These kinds of labels are assigned by the maintainers. And once the issue has the ready for work label, only then a community member is supposed to resolve it.
Okay, yeah, got it.
So we actually have a comprehensive set of labels that help the contributors identify which issues are ready for work. So things that have these three labels, good first issue, hackable first, and help wanted, are definitely ready for contribution. Things that have a CC staff only label, these are out of bounds for the community. So these require some special privileges that most people will not have by default. So those are actually logged. But other than that, if an issue is ready for work and it has a help wanted label, by all means go ahead. You don't even need to ask for permission. Like you can just say I'm interested to work on it and raise a PR. So we'll just start the server here, and like the goal of this demonstration is to tell you that the readme.md file is the best source for information on how to go about building the project.
Sorry to interrupt, Dhruv. I think some people are not able to see the screen properly. If you can zoom a bit, if possible.
Is this better?
Okay. I think yes. Great, thanks.
So this message essentially indicates that the server is now running, and you can just visit localhost 5000. You see the same site. So we now have a local copy of the site that is posted on the internet, and we can make changes to it and see the outcome in real time. So we just go back to the page and see that it has some uh, it has the bugs, right? We need to fix it. We open a new tab. Okay. On this page, we can just search by. Cool. So we have these. We reach the point in the code where this part has been defined, and we can just change it to refer to the new labels, right? So issues that are opened newly have this awaiting triage label. So we change that to the right label name, and also on this line. We need to do our commits on a separate branch. Again, not going into the specifics of Git. A branch is another copy of the code where your changes will not conflict with the changes made by other people who are working on the same code base. So I'll just name my branch in a way that describes the changes that I've made. So it's fix label name. And once you've made the changes, you just add the file, make a commit with some proper commit message. So replace deprecated label with the new label. Push these changes to your own fork, right? So once you push these changes, I think I just used my own name to make this commit. So I'll just go back. So since we made a fork of this repo, we should probably add our fork as a remote so that once we make the changes, we can push to the fork instead of the main repo, right? So we add our remote, which will be github.com. And once we've made these changes, we push, so git push for fix label name. Right. So this has been pushed, and GitHub just gives us a link which we can use to directly create the PR. So I'm just gonna open this up. I can still see my screen, right? So in the PR, we uh, give a descriptive message. So this fixes the name of the actual issue, which was 533 by description. So it changes the old labels to the new ones. These sections are not relevant, so we can get rid of them. And the goal should be to check as many boxes here as you possibly can. So you need to check if this works locally. It has a descriptive title. The messages are all up to date. So I actually didn't try running this locally, right? So I should not check this box and should actually check if this works. So these, I'll just open this locally and see if everything works after my changes. So yeah, I replaced the old labeled names with the new ones. So this looks fine to me. I can just open the PR and this targets the main repo. And messages are all up to code. I did not add tests or change documentation, but that's fine. And I ran this locally and checked that it works. So with this, I created the pull request, right? Now this looks all fine to me, and like to my abilities, this is probably the best code that I could have written, right? But the benefit of open source is that someone will actually comment on this and give you proper feedback. So in this case, that's me. I'm gonna review this PR and critique it, right? So I'll just share my screen again, this time as myself. So I got a notification saying that someone has actually opened a new PR. So my job is to review it. So I see that the person has actually changed the label but has not used the new label format that we are present. So I can give a feedback. Use. So we're back on as Anandi, and we see that our pull request now has a review, and we've been asked to use the new label styles. So a lot of the times, the first code that you write will have reviews on it that ask you to make changes, because nobody writes code perfectly on the first try, and it's perfectly fine. This review does not mean there's a mistake with the code. This is just a chance to improve it further. So uh, we don't know what the updated styles are, right? So we can go back to the issue, and there we see that usually we have some references. The maintainers who open an issue will generally try to make it so that there's always some help available, and we have an existing PR that's been merged for reference. You can just go and check what that PR did and see what the changed files were, and we see that there's actually a label format here that applies some styles to our labels. So our goal should be to use that, right? We can go back to our file. And new spans. So awaiting triage label will have these classes. So once we've made this change, we can just go back to the page that we are open locally and refresh it. So we see that this change has already been applied here, right? This looks much better. This also matches with the old other labels that we have on this page, and this is genuinely an improvement. So once this change has been made, we need to make another commit. So add contents, push fork. Done. So once you push new changes to your PRs, they'll already be so once you push new changes, the PR automatically gets approved, gets updated with those changes, right? So as soon as that is done, the maintainer or gets another notification that the person has changed something on their PR, and they can just go back and re-review it and gets approved. So from the point of view of the developer, these changes are now being approved. So that's how you basically work in open source. Once the PR is approved, it essentially gets merged, but there are some conflicts that we need to resolve. So let's see what those are. The conflicts basically happen when you make change to a file that has already been changed by someone else. So in this case, I had changed the file earlier with my own username, and now I changed it with my sister's account. So those files had a collision, and using the web-based editor, we resolved it. There was just one conflict. It's resolved now. So once you're done with that, you can just mark as resolved and commit the merge. Go back and see if the changes are all right. And since this PR was approved earlier, it remains approved after merge commit. We have some automated tests that will run on each PR. These are in progress right now. But as soon as those are done, anyone with merge access can merge your PR and your name will be added to the list of contributors. So it's as easy as that. This was the main crux of what I wanted to share with you today. But there's just some more things that I need to share with you. The first thing is it does not require any special skills, right? Anyone can write code, and if you can write code locally, you can work in open source. It's as simple as that. But the one thing that separates people who work in open source from those that work on their own is communication. So uh, the main thing that you need to do inculcate is that you need to be proactive when communicating. So you'll run into issues. You might not know the right solution for your code. You might not even know the language at all. But if you just ask, like, I'm stuck, can you please help me out? There's always someone who has worked on this code before you, and they'll definitely come and help you out. So an example for this is, well, actually come across this yesterday, and I thought this will be a great example to share with you guys. Not this one. How can I still see my screen, right? I'm not sure if you can.
Yes.
So this is an issue that was just resolved yesterday. The PR for this was merged yesterday. So what happened in this case was the person who wanted to work on this uh, just said that they want to work on it, right? And we assigned the issue to them. And she was not aware of the changes that need to be done. She just mentioned this. And we got back to her with the reply that what needs to be done in this issue. Then again, she tried some things out. She did her research. She went through some sources on the internet, found some things that she thought would help in solving, but was still not able to do it, which is perfectly fine. She's new to the code base, she's new to the framework, things like that. So we had another conversation. I got back to her in a little bit more detail, some more examples, uh, pointed out some documentation pages that contain the solution for this, and she just made her first PR yesterday. This was merged by me, and her name now is listed in the contributors for this site. So that's basically all you need to do, right? You just need to be proactive. Just keep asking the maintainers for help if you need it, but do your research, right? You cannot just ask the maintainers to point you to documentation without doing the research first. So that's this basically it. Just pick an issue to work on that matches your skill set. Ask for help when you need it, and start immediately. Like, you don't need to wait to become an expert in any language of framework before you need to start. So this is actually the best time to get started, because if you start now, you get a t-shirt. So, and your peers are on the team, right? So Nimish is working with us, Dhruvi is with us. She actually built this site. So if you have any issues in this particular repo, you can directly reach out to her. And yeah, so when you have friends on the team, make the most of it, right? And I'll hand it over to Nimish to carry this forward.
All right. Having a poll right now, right? Yes, I'll be sending a poll in the chat. The poll asks, what's the most hated Git command? So the crux behind it is when you lost code due to some Git command. We have had a lot of experiences as such. We would like to know what you guys think. Force push is definitely one of them. We have had a lot of trouble with force push. Okay, so the results say reset, force, okay, merge, rebase. I've never used
Rohit,
rebase, honestly.
share your screen so we can see the results also. Let's see the commands that make us cry.
Sure.
Meanwhile, there was one question by Ritik, but if you can see, but if after there is a merge conflict due to a different branch combination, then I don't know. If you guys can read the question and answer it.
Question.
After forking, we need to change branch also. Is that the question?
This
Ritik?
is the question. But after there is a merge conflict due to different branches, combination, then what? I do not completely understand what it says. Ritik, can you elaborate, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Suppose there is a branch in there is a uh, there is a code which I have forked it and I have made some new branches in it and I am currently using that branch. Then I push that branch into main code and there is another branch in that code which conflicts. And what?
So, Ritik, your branch will always be merged to master, right? So
Yeah,
there
yeah.
can only be
I
a
mean,
conflict between your branch and master. And in which case you will have to resolve the conflicts by seeing the changes in both branches and choosing which of them to apply. It can be both, it can be a combination of both of these.
but sir, but master branch will be more preferred than my branch.
It's no, not necessarily, because you're making a patch, right? So there is a bug in master that you fixed in your branch. And so the changes in master are definitely relevant, but it does not mean master will just completely override the changes in your branch. So the final outcome will be the changes in master and your branch as well. So it will be a combination of both. Does that solve your question?
Yeah, he is texted okay. Okay, so yeah, the results for our polls say git reset hyphen hyphen hard is the worst one. The second is git rebase, and the third one is obviously git force push. So guys, pro tip: never force push into any branches. Um, okay. So moving on, let's go to Nimish. Let's see what Nimish has to discuss. If any of you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can directly ask them by unmuting yourself. That's also fine. Yes, Nimish, over to you.
All right. So I'll share my screen. All right. I hope it's visible. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So hi guys. I'm Nimish, and I'm a core team member at DSC IIIT and a technical writing intern at Creative Commons. Um, so I'll be talking about open source programs and how my experience at CZ has been so far. All right, so let me give a tiny introduction about myself. Just bear with me for a few moments. So, anyways, I've introduced myself already. So I'll talk about how I got the opportunity to actually intern at CC. So it was through an open source event or an open source program known as GSOD. So GSOD basically stands for Google Season of Documentation, and it happens every year. And so what Google essentially does is it invites open source organizations from across the world to basically have like submit projects, and then anybody in the entire world is actually free to submit proposals for those projects. and then the open source organization basically selects some people for working with them. So that is a very brief intro about GSOT. We'll get into details later on. Then answering the next question is, what do I do at CC? So as I said, I'm a technical writing intern, so there's a lot of writing. But apart from that, I'm also engaged in building a site. So basically, here's the workflow. What I follow is that whenever I write something, I also put it in a website, and then the website is deployed. So that is how the workflow is roughly. And if you want to know more, I think you can head over to this link, opensource.creativecommons.org/blog. So that is basically our CC blog, our CC technical blog, wherein people from CC and anyone from like basically anywhere can just put up blog posts of how they've been using CC attributed stuff, or if they've contributed to CC in any way. You can always put up a blog post. And this will also count as a PR, by the way. So if you want to write a blog post for us, you're most welcome to. You'll just have to fork the Creative Commons, the opensource.creativecommons.github.io repo, if I'm not wrong. And there's an elaborate markdown file explaining what you should be doing. So yeah. Next question is, where can we reach out to you? Basically, we have a Slack set up for Creative Commons, and everybody is welcome to join it. You'll find the link somewhere. I don't have it here, but yeah. So Slack is the primary source. Then you can reach out to us on GitHub, obviously, and Twitter. All right, so let's talk about open source programs and events. The first one is Hacktoberfest. I guess we should talk about previous Hacktoberfest events as compared to the one that's currently running, for obvious reasons. But okay, so Hacktoberfest is essentially an event which celebrates open source. And the main point of it being is to invite people who haven't contributed before into contributing. So it's powered by DigitalOcean and it's hosted by GitHub. So you basically have to send 4 PRs and you will be rewarded for the same. Unfortunately, this has been exploited quite a bit this year, but the main motive of it is basically to learn and grow, as we should see later. Then the next, and this happens in October, I don't have to mention that, but yes. Then the next event that we'll be talking about is GSOC, or Google Summer of Code. Now, GSOC is a very interesting event because it follows a similar pattern to GSOT, but is slightly different. So it's probably the most well-known out of all of these. But yeah, so what happens essentially is organizations put out projects and then you have to submit proposals for them. This part is the same, but you are evaluated in phases, if I'm not wrong. And then you get paid some stipend for the same as well. I think Dhruv will be able to elaborate more on this on GSOC more than me, because he's been through GSOC and he knows exactly how it works. But yeah, for the most part, it is all about coding, and it's basically making sure that you're done with the project in about 3 months' time. Then you have GSOT, which I had applied to and I got through. So GSOT is essentially Google Seasonal Documentation. Again, the process is pretty much the same. Applications open. You can submit your application, which is basically a project proposal. And then the open source organization checks your application, makes sure that, basically wants to see if you're the best fit, because there'll be quite a few people submitting applications from all over the world. So they basically scrutinize your application and select the best one. And again, like the name suggests, it's documentation, right? So it will be a lot of writing, a lot of technical writing, if I may say so. And you are expected to, again, finish it in about 3 months' time for a standard project. And you are also paid quite a bit for it. Next, you have Outreachy. Now, Outreachy is essentially a diversity program wherein they invite different sections of the society to participate in. So I think this is also for 3 months' time, and you also paid a stipend for the same. So I think Dhruv will be able to elaborate more on this on Outreachy because she's been through it. Then you have 3 more open source programs, which is GSOC, RGSOC, and MLH fellowships. I won't be talking much about these, but they're worth a Google. So you can always figure out if these are the ones that you want. So Girl Script Summer of Code is organized under the Girl Script India Foundation. And they also follow a similar pattern to GSOC, but it's again slightly different. Then you have RGSOC. Unfortunately, RGSOC was basically scrapped this year because the Travis Foundation couldn't basically get the funds or the necessary workforce to work for RGSOC. But it has been running for the past 7 years, so it's definitely a good open source program to participate in. Then you have MLH fellowships, which happen quite a few times every year. And MLH, if you didn't know, stands for Major League Hacking. So MLH is associated with GitHub and a lot of other open source organizations. So what MLH essentially does is you submit, you fill up a form basically, and they evaluate based on what on the form you submit. You have a bunch of interviews, and after which you are through for MLH. And I would say the hardest one to get through in all of these is probably GSOC, but I might be wrong. But yes, so this is a basic gist of the events. Moving on, let's just, I mean, I told you about all these events, but why should you actually participate in them? Does it make sense for you to participate in them? So the first thing you need to understand is all of these events or programs are not competitions. They are basically a celebration of open source. So the best example that I would give you is you've seen so many websites, right? You've seen so many apps. So most of you will probably know this, but almost like 85% of them are powered by open source software. So whenever you look at some open source stuff, you should probably be like, yeah, I think that I should probably contribute to this, because then the code that I write will possibly be working on so many devices. And that is a cool feeling. So yeah, so it is a celebration of open source more than a competition and pulling each other down. That it's not that, right? So, okay, but still, why? If you're still curious to know why, the first point is that you're directly giving back to the society. So here, the society that I speak of is the technical society, right? You will see a lot of people, a lot of maintainers on GitHub just working day and night just to make sure that their code is proper, it's working, no build is failing, all of that. And I'm sure Dhruv has also been through this. So it's important that you understand that there are people out there who are just building software that they think will help the society. So yes, you're directly giving back to the society. Now, you're learning and growing. It's important to understand that when you look up something, you will possibly not know how to run it. You will not know what particulars are involved in building that project. But hey, that's the cool part. Just clone the repo, follow the README, look at what you can do, make sure it's running, and you have the project running locally, which is great. So now you feel like, hey, there's something off with this project. Maybe this space can be removed. Maybe this padding can be removed. Maybe this margin can be removed. Anything. So it's basically taking small piece of information and putting it in a bigger project. And who knows, you can also be a contributor to React, Vue.js, and other big open source projects just by learning and growing. So the next thing is that you're rewarded for the work you do. That's important. So if I talk about Hacktoberfest, the unfortunate part is that the reward is materialistic. So people are just scanning the process and trying to get the t-shirt, right? But the reward that I speak of here is completely different. It's more about self-satisfaction and, you know, meeting new people. So you need to understand that it's a developer community and you're not just the only one working with code. You have so many other people, so many other intelligent people, and you would love to interact with them. So that is one reward. And then finally, you get noticed in the open source community. Now, this is important because whenever you apply to open source programs, they are looking for the reach you have, the contributions you've made. And by contributions, I don't mean green squares on your contribution chart, not that. I'm just saying that when people are looking up to your profile, they need to be like, okay, so this guy is really, applying his skills for the benefit of mankind, something like that. So yeah, so you get noticed in the open source community. So finally, I'd like to talk about my experience at CC, and it's been really good. So, I mean, Creative Commons is a huge organization, and I'm happy to be like a small part of it. And the best part about working at CC is that since CCOS, which is the open source part of Creative Commons, it is basically like very actively involved in everything. So whenever you actually interact with someone in CC, you always find that the person is active and will respond to your queries immediately. So, and more than this, I don't think we are working with extremely obsolete technology or something. So the main point is that the tech stack is really fun. And for me right now, I'm working with Vue.js and Storybook.js along with StackEdit. So these are some technologies that I didn't previously know, like maybe a couple of months back or 3 months back. But then while submitting the proposal for this entire thing for GSOD, I had to look everything up, and that's how I learned it, and that's how I applied, and now I'm here. So that's something cool. Then the schedule is extremely flexible. We have weekly scrums, and it's up to me when I want to work and all of that. So that's pretty cool. Then, not to mention, the people are great over at CC, and we have a great open source presence. So if you just look up the open source site or maybe even our homepage on GitHub, you will find so many repositories. So you are actually free to contribute to any of them. So right now, Dhruv just showed a demo on our open source website, but you're free to contribute to any. So we have CC Search, which is basically it's also Chrome extension, by the way. So it basically searches images for you to use in your projects, and it will also give you the it will basically download the attribution file as well with it. So it's not like you're using an image off the internet and you will get copyright claim. So you're also getting the attribution, so you can also link the attribution and everything. That's a pretty neat feature. There are other repositories like Vocabulary, wherein it's basically the design system of Creative Commons open source, and this is used in quite a few websites. So yes, so we have a great OS presence, and most importantly, we have active members from all the globe. So when I say active members, we have chapters all over the world. So India has a chapter, and Russia has a chapter, and stuff like that. So yes, so it's a big organization, and I'm absolutely loving the work here so far. And I hope to complete my internship and be done with the project I've been assigned to. All right, so that concludes my session. Thank you for patiently hearing out to us, and we would hope to see contributions rolling in from your side soon. So we'll have our Q&A session now. I guess a lot of people have a lot of questions, so let's go ahead with that. Anybody has any questions? How can I find an issue I can work on? So I think this is being covered. So we have an issue finder. I think Dhruv, you can take this.
Yeah. So in CC, you have an issue. We have actually built an issue finder that helps people find issues that match both their skills and their experience level. And you can just check a couple of boxes and find out the issues that are specifically tailored to your domain. But on most other organizations and repos, you can actually use the GitHub search feature to search for issues by their label, by their tech stack, and things like that. So just that. Avinash, in that case, I can generally recommend you to reach out to your mentors. For example, at CC, you can just join us on Slack and join the Slack channel relevant to the project that you're working on, where people who have already set this up can help you get started. And
Sir, hello. Sir, while we are applying for GSOC, does personal project in GitHub matters when we apply for a particular company? They see all that things.
Yeah, in GSOC, the thing that matters most is essentially how actively you communicate, how clear your proposal is, and how good you are at the thing that you're aiming to solve. So even if you've not worked extensively with the organization, if you have communicated enough and your proposal is solid, it can help you in getting selected.
Sir, I want to ask you that the company which I am applying for sees my GitHub account and my projects which I have done and all other stuffs.
Yes, we actually like it's a trade secret, I can say, but we actually go through your profile on LinkedIn, GitHub, your if you're applying for something like GSword, which Nimish did, we go through your Twitter accounts, we go through your personal blogs, anything that you mention in your proposal, we actually check out and make sure that you're the right person for the job. Uh,
Okay, we have some questions in the chat. How do I make sure my forked repo is always up to date with the original repo?
So you just pull from the original repo and push to your fork. So
Okay.
locally get pull and get push. So that's all.
Then the next question is, which was the first open source contribution you ever made? Which organization and what topic was it?
Nimish?
I should probably check my GitHub because I don't remember the first open source contribution that I made. Um, I guess it was in. I guess it was in Ethereum, if I'm not wrong. Uh, I don't know. So, I mean, the first open source contribution that you actually make is not. I would, at least in my case, it wasn't the best I could have done. Now, looking back at it, I feel it was very stupid or something. But essentially, there were some misnomers in a few places, and me being me, I felt like I should correct them. So that is all I did, and I raised a PR in a very scared manner because I thought it would get rejected. But eventually, it did get accepted, and they felt like okay, the changes that I had actually done were pretty relevant. So that was my first contribution. Was this question for me, by the way?
I think it was open-ended. I
It's
actually
a
want to
question
hear
for all
everyone's
of
replies on this.
Yeah.
Dhruv, would you like to answer the same question?
Mine was actually to Simpai. I had actually wanted to do a Google Summer of Code with Simpai back in 2017 or so. So I'd actually joined the community, talked a little bit with the people, and I saw an issue that was in a specific domain of mathematics that I considered myself to be good at. So I raised a PR. It was actually very terrible, and but the mentors were so good. I actually say that Simpai is my favorite organization because they took that trash PR. They held long discussions with me on every line of code that I had written, and in the end, with their help, I was able to polish it and actually get it merged. And the end PR, the thing that was after several rounds of discussion, and the thing that I had originally pushed, they were worlds apart. So well, I learned so much about open source in that one PR that I probably would have taken years to learn if I had gone by myself. So that's my first.
Okay, interesting. Dhruvi, would you like to answer the same?
For me, it was a local it is not an organization. It was a local college uh, group. It was called WebDev Labs, and we had a project where we had to make a Chrome extension which used paper. Uh, so so I was so scared that I personally texted the mentor and explained him what I'm trying to do, and he helped me how to actually go through it. And then I made a PR. So that was my first. And if we go all good, then it was Mozilla. I first contributed to Mozilla.
I think like it's important to mention here that making PRs is also a learning process along with the code that you write. So yeah, everybody makes a terrible first PR. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's the general theme. So your first PR is actually the one where you learn the most.
Hmm.
So Avinash is asking what IRC is. So IRC is actually Internet Relay Chat. It's a form of chat that evolved a couple of decades ago. No one actually uses it that much these days. It's pretty hard to get a grasp on. Uh, it's basically the philosophical predecessor of Slack. So most people have IRC links, but if they have an alternative like Slack or mailing list, I'd recommend you join that instead of IRC.
So I have another question. Let's assume there is an issue and I can use different algorithms to solve the same. For example, there's I need to sort something. How do I decide on what to use?
So if like in the case of sort, there's a clear option. You can use the best one for the job, the most efficient one. But if there's a confusion in that case, the best thing would be to open a draft PR and see what the mentors' opinions are on that. If they find that it's not the most optimal solution, they'll probably leave a comment on your draft PR.
Okay. Okay.
I think now that we're talking about IRC and Slack, I think we can put our Slack invite in the chat if Dhruv, you agree.
Yeah, sure. Please, all of you are welcome. The more people we have on Slack, the better.
Yeah.
Okay. So guys, let's make this an informal conversation now. You can turn on your microphones, ask anything you want. All the talk is over. We can have an informal discussion. Anyone is free to ask anything, discuss anything, share something. So, Dhruv, how long have you been working in all this coding profession and open source stuff?
So I've been working in open source for about 4 years now. So the first couple of years I was making my own open source projects as a part of my campus coding group. So I'm from IIT Roorkee, by the way. So we have a group called Information Management Group in ITR, which releases open source projects quite often. So the last couple of years of college, I was working there, and post college, I've been working with CC for about 2 years. So that's that.
And what's the motivation for you to, put in the work? Is there any incentive? Do you get paid, or how is it?
So I got paid for GSOC, but then I liked the work so much that post that I've been working with CC as a volunteer. Uh, in July of this month, they actually took me on as a contractor for doing this work as a community coordinator. So I've been working with them as a coordinator for 3 months now, and I get paid for that. But apart from this, the learning is its own reward.
Okay. So, is most of the open source work voluntary?
No, actually, open source is generally you start off as a volunteer, but once you like get familiar with the code base. Once you start to learn the ropes of this, most open source projects also have their own commercial counterparts. So if you think in terms of CC, we have some paid people working on open source in CC search, in the backend of CC search and things like that. So it's all about getting to know the people, getting to know the organization, and once there's an opening, you probably have a higher chance of getting selected because they've already seen how you work.
Right. Okay. Okay, guys. Any other questions? Any one of you? I think we can wait for 2 minutes, and if we do not have any questions, we can wrap up the session.
I think now guys get some motivation for Hacktoberfest contributions. Instead of making just random PRs, now you can make some useful PRs, right? You can drop yes or no.
Again, just to reiterate, we are actually very happy to have you contributing to our projects. You can definitely reach us on Slack, on Twitter, on probably email as well. Just make sure that you do your research before reaching out, and best of luck.
Okay, so I think we can wrap up the session. It was great interacting with all of you. I at least personally learned a lot about open source. I didn't know that issues are already present and I can just go and solve them. That is something I learned. I had a great session. I had a great experience. I hope the others did as well. With that, let's wrap up the session. I would like to thank Creative Commons, Dhruv, Nimish, Dhruvi, all of you for taking out your time. I would like to thank Ekta Arora for making this happen. And yeah, that's all. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. I hope everyone learned something. And
Thank you guys.
goodbye. Have a nice
It's
day.
wonderful.